The sand beneath your feet is soaked with blood, but not in the way you think. You're standing in the center of the Roman Colosseum, 50,000 screaming voices thundering around you, and the gladiator lying wounded at your feet is about to shatter everything you believe about this place. Because he's not dying, he's acting. The referee? Yes, there's a referee. Steps between the fighters and calls a halt. The crowd isn't baying for blood. They're applauding the skill they just witnessed. The defeated gladiator rises, bows to the emperor, and walks out alive to fight another day. The most famous death scene in history. It never happened. What you're about to discover will obliterate every gladiator movie you've ever seen. The reality inside these massive stone amphitheaters was so opposite to what Hollywood taught you that you'll question every historical fact you've ever been told. This wasn't a death pit. It was the ancient world's most sophisticated entertainment industry, where million-dollar athletes performed choreographed spectacles for crowds larger than most modern stadiums. Here's the truth that will shatter your worldview. Roman gladiator arenas operated more like WWE than a slaughterhouse. They had unions, medical insurance, celebrity endorsement deals, and survival rates better than modern professional boxing. A single trained gladiator was worth more than 20 skilled craftsmen. Combined, roughly equivalent to a modern NFL quarterback's salary. Historical records show that only 10 to 15% of gladiatorial combats ended in death. The rest? Pure theatre. The numbers alone will stagger you. The Colosseum held 50,000 spectators, making it larger than Yankee Stadium. But that's just the beginning. The underground complex beneath the arena floor contained 32 elevators powered by counterweights and pulleys, operated by teams of slaves who could raise exotic animals, scenery, and gladiators to arena level in perfect synchronization. The hydraulic system could flood the entire arena floor to a depth of 3 feet for naval battle recreations, complete with scaled-down warships and hundreds of skilled sailors. Gladiators had personal physicians, specialized diets calculated down to the specific nutritional needs of their fighting style, and fought according to strict rules overseen by referees who were often retired champions themselves. The famous thumbs-down signal, a Victorian-era invention. The real signal for death was a finger drawn across the throat, and it was rarely given because dead gladiators meant financial ruin for their owners. But here's where the story gets truly mind-bending. Gladiators had fan clubs that operated like modern celebrity worship. Roman women would collect gladiator sweat and blood as beauty products, believing these substances had magical properties that could enhance their attractiveness and fertility. They would attend training sessions just to watch their favorite fighters practice, screaming encouragement and throwing flowers. Some wealthy women even had affairs with gladiators, risking their social standing for the thrill of being with these dangerous celebrities. Gladiator merchandise. Oil lamps shaped like helmets, drinking cups decorated with famous fighters. Figurines in combat poses, sold throughout the empire like modern sports memorabilia. The most famous fighters had their own personal brands, complete with signature fighting styles, trademark equipment, and even theme songs played by arena musicians when they entered the ring. Street vendors sold gladiator dolls to children, while bakeries created bread shaped like tiny swords and shields. The economic impact was staggering. A single gladiator school employed hundreds of people: trainers, physicians, cooks, equipment makers, accountants, and marketing specialists. The weapons industry alone generated millions in revenue, with specialized smiths creating different types of swords, nets, tridents, and armor for each fighting style. The exotic animal trade brought creatures from across the known world: tigers from India, rhinoceroses from Africa, bears from the northern forests, all transported in specially designed ships and cages. Whether you're listening from New York or London, Tokyo or Sydney, you're about to discover how these ancient arenas operated as complex business enterprises that would make modern sports franchises envious. The Romans invented season tickets, luxury boxes for wealthy patrons, and even concession stands that sold wine, roasted nuts, and program scrolls describing the fighters' backgrounds. Before we dive into this hidden world of calculated spectacle and surprising humanity, please hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. This is the story about what really happened inside Roman gladiator arenas, and how the greatest show on earth was built on deception, drama, and the most sophisticated entertainment industry the world had ever seen. The year is 107 AD, and you're a grain merchant from Alexandria who's just lost everything. Pirates destroyed your ship during what should have been a routine voyage to Athens, taking not just your cargo, but your entire future. The wheat you'd bought with borrowed money now lies at the bottom of the Mediterranean, while the creditors who funded your venture show no mercy for your misfortune. They've seized your warehouse, your home, and even your personal possessions to partially satisfy debts that still exceed your ability to pay. Your family now faces starvation in a city that shows no sympathy for commercial failure. Your wife, once accustomed to silk tunics and golden jewelry, now wears the rough wool of the desperate. Your children, who played with ivory toys and attended the finest schools, now beg for scraps in the markets. The friends who once welcomed you to their dinner parties now cross the street to avoid acknowledging your existence. The streets of Rome offer no sympathy, only the harsh reality that you need money fast. And there's only one place in the empire where a desperate man can earn a fortune in a single afternoon. The stories circulate through the taverns where unemployed men gather. Volunteers who survive their first fight earn enough to live comfortably for years. Some fighters become so wealthy they own multiple villas, maintain private armies of servants, and dine with senators who once would have spurned them. You stand outside the Ludus Magnus, the largest gladiator training school in Rome, connected to the Colosseum by an underground tunnel that runs beneath the street. The building itself is imposing, 3 stories of stone and brick, with small windows that hint at the complex life within. The morning sun hasn't yet burned off the mist rising from the Tiber River, but already you can hear the sounds that will define your new existence. The clash of wooden swords against shields, the sharp commands of trainers, the grunts of men pushing their bodies beyond normal limits. Your stomach churns with hunger and fear, but desperation drives you forward. You've heard the stories that volunteers who survive their first fight earn enough to live comfortably for years. That skilled fighters become wealthy beyond imagination. That the emperor himself knows their names and rewards them with gifts of property and slaves. You've also heard the other stories, the ones whispered in taverns about men who entered those doors and never emerged, whose bodies were dragged from the arena to feed the wild beasts, or burned in common graves. But hunger has a way of making even the impossible seem reasonable. Your wife's face flashes before your eyes, hollow-cheeked and desperate, holding your youngest child who cries constantly from an empty belly. Your older son, once proud of his father's success, now looks at you with the mixture of love and disappointment that cuts deeper than any blade. The decision is already made, has been made since the moment you realized that conventional means could never restore your family's security. You approach the entrance, noting how the guards study you with professional interest. They've seen your type before, the desperate, the bankrupt, the men with nothing left to lose. But they've also seen the survivors, the ones who transform desperation into determination and emerge wealthy and respected. One of them, a scarred veteran whose missing eye tells its own story of arena combat, nods toward the entrance. "Another volunteer," he says to his companion. "They're getting younger every day." His tone carries neither cruelty nor sympathy, just the professional assessment of a man who understands the business of survival. The massive wooden doors, reinforced with iron bands and decorated with bronze reliefs depicting famous gladiatorial victories, represent your only hope. Behind them lies either salvation or destruction, wealth or death, a future or an ending. You place your hand on the worn bronze handle, feeling the metal warm beneath your palm, and prepare to cross the threshold into a world that will challenge everything you thought you knew about survival, honor, and what it means to be human. The smell hits you first, a complex mixture of sweat, leather, olive oil, and something else you can't quite identify. Blood, perhaps, but not the overwhelming stench of death you expected. Instead, it's the metallic tang of training injuries, quickly cleaned and treated by skilled physicians. The scent of burning incense mingles with the aroma of cooking food. Not the gruel you'd imagined, but the rich smell of roasted meat and seasoned vegetables that speaks of substantial investment in the fighter's well-being. The sound follows, not the roar of savage beasts or the screams of dying men, but the rhythmic thud of wooden practice swords against leather shields, punctuated by sharp commands from trainers and the occasional burst of laughter from groups of fighters sharing jokes between exercises. You hear the scratch of stylus on wax tablet as someone keeps training records, the clink of metal as weapons are cleaned and repaired, and the low murmur of conversation in half a dozen languages as fighters from across the empire interact. Your eyes adjust to the dimmer light, and what you see defies every expectation you'd formed about this place. The central courtyard before you is immaculate, with sand raked smooth in geometric patterns, and walls adorned with colorful frescoes depicting not just famous victories, but also scenes of daily life. Gladiators at meals, receiving medical care, and interacting with their families. Everywhere you look, there's evidence of careful organization and substantial investment. This isn't the brutal prison you imagined. It's a sophisticated training facility that rivals the finest military academies. The buildings are well maintained, with fresh paint and sturdy construction. Gardens provide both beauty and practical herbs for the medical staff. A small library contains scrolls on tactics, philosophy, and literature. Even the practice rings are works of engineering, with proper drainage and carefully calculated dimensions that allow for safe but realistic combat training. The gladiators themselves completely shatter your preconceptions. These aren't the desperate, half-starved prisoners you expected to find. They're athletes in peak physical condition, their bodies sculpted by years of specialized training and careful nutrition. Their skin bears the bronze tone of men who spend time in the sun, but it's unmarked by the constant wounds you'd imagine. Some wear fine woolen tunics between practice sessions, dyed in colors that speak of wealth and status. Others sport jewelry rings, armbands, and neck chains that would not be out of place in a senator's household. A few fighters are even reading scrolls, their fingers moving across the parchment with the ease of educated men. One group debates the merits of different fighting techniques with the intellectual intensity of philosophers. Another practices speeches they'll deliver to the crowd, understanding that entertainment value is as important as combat skill. The diversity of activities astounds you. This is clearly a place where minds as well as bodies are trained for the complexities of arena performance. The trainer approaches. A man named Lucius, whose weathered face and numerous scars speak of decades in the arena, but whose eyes are sharp and calculating rather than cruel. He moves with the fluid grace of a natural athlete, despite what must be at least 50 years of age. His clothing is simple but well made, and he carries himself with the confidence of a man who has faced death repeatedly and emerged victorious. "Another volunteer," he says, but his tone is not unkind. There's even a hint of sympathy in his voice, as if he recognizes the desperation that drives men to this place. "What's your story, friend? Debts? Family obligations? Or just the call of glory?" His question suggests he's heard every possible reason for a man to volunteer for the arena, and that he judges none of them. His experience has taught him that circumstances, not character, usually determine who ends up seeking this dangerous path to fortune. You notice the medical station set up in one corner of the courtyard, where a skilled physician tends to a fighter's shoulder injury, with the same care and attention you'd expect for a senator's son. The doctor's instruments are clean and well maintained, his technique professional and gentle. Nearby, a nutritionist discusses meal plans with a group of gladiators, explaining how different combinations of foods will enhance their strength, endurance, and recovery time. Charts on the wall show detailed dietary requirements for fighters of different sizes and fighting styles. The complexity of the operation astounds you. This is no simple death camp, where men are thrown into mortal combat with minimal preparation. It's a sophisticated business enterprise designed to produce the finest warriors the world has ever seen, while maximizing their chances of survival and success. Every aspect of the facility speaks to substantial investment, careful planning, and genuine concern for the fighters' welfare. Not out of altruism, but because healthy, skilled gladiators are valuable assets that generate enormous profits. The first person you actually meet changes everything you thought you knew about gladiators. Marcus, a Thracian fighter in his mid-30s, extends a calloused but clean hand in greeting. His grip is firm but not aggressive, and his eyes hold an intelligence that surprises you. He's neither the savage brute nor the desperate victim you expected, but something far more complex. A professional athlete who has found a way to thrive in circumstances that would destroy most men. "New volunteer?" he asks with genuine interest, and you notice that his Latin is fluent and educated, with only the slightest trace of an accent. "Don't look so terrified. Most of us eat better than senators." There's humor in his voice, but also truth. As he speaks, you notice his teeth are white and straight, his skin healthy, and his body shows the kind of muscle definition that comes from excellent nutrition and professional training. It's true. As Marcus leads you through the facilities, you discover that successful gladiators enjoy privileges that would make free citizens envious. They have their own servants, not slaves, but paid attendants who help with equipment, meals, and personal care. Their private quarters are decorated with personal belongings, family portraits, religious statues, books, and musical instruments. The rooms are small but comfortable, with real beds, clean linens, and windows that let in natural light. Marcus himself owns property in 3 cities and has invested in a shipping business that his brother manages while he fights. The profits from 2 good fights, he explains, bought me a warehouse in Ostia and a villa in Campania. I employ 15 men in my business ventures, and they're all doing well. His success story is not unique. Several fighters have parlayed their arena earnings into substantial business empires that will support them long after their fighting days end. The key, Marcus explains, as you walk past practice rings where fighters spar with careful precision, is to understand that this is theatre as much as combat. The crowd wants a show, not a slaughter. Give them drama, skill, and spectacle, and they'll love you for it. Die needlessly, and you're just another forgotten corpse. His words carry the weight of hard-won experience. He's survived 43 fights over 8 years. An achievement that speaks to both exceptional skill and intelligence. You watch as 2 fighters engage in what appears to be mortal combat, their swords flashing in the afternoon sun. But Marcus points out the subtle signs that reveal the choreographed nature of their encounter. The way they position themselves to create dramatic angles for the crowd. How they time their attacks to build suspense. And the almost imperceptible signals they use to communicate during the fight. Real combat lasts minutes, Marcus explains. Entertainment lasts hours. We're paid to provide the latter. You meet Helena, a female gladiator whose very existence challenges your assumptions about Roman society. She's from Germania, captured during one of the recent campaigns along the Rhine frontier, but she speaks Latin with the fluency of an educated woman and carries herself with the dignity of nobility. Her blonde hair is braided with colored ribbons, and she wears a tunic of fine linen that would not be out of place in a wealthy household. I could have been a slave in someone's kitchen, she says matter-of-factly, scrubbing floors and emptying chamber pots until I died of exhaustion. Instead, I chose to fight for my freedom. 3 more victories, and I earn my wooden sword. Then, I'll open my own training school. Her plan is detailed and realistic. She's already identified a location in Gaul, negotiated with potential investors, and begun recruiting promising fighters who will form her initial stable. The diversity of backgrounds astounds you. There's Gaius, a former soldier who volunteered after his legion was disbanded following a budget crisis. His military training gives him a significant advantage in formation fighting, and he's become the unofficial leader of the newer recruits. He teaches them not just combat techniques, but also the psychological skills necessary to survive in an environment where death is always a possibility. Then there's Demetrius, a former slave who discovered he had a natural talent for combat, and now earns more in a month than his former master made in a year. He's used his earnings to purchase his own freedom and that of his family, and he's now working to establish a network of safe houses for other slaves seeking their freedom. His story demonstrates how the arena can provide opportunities for social mobility that exist nowhere else in Roman society. But it's the story of young Felix that truly reveals the human complexity of this world. At 19, he is the son of a successful baker who fell in love with a patrician's daughter. When her father forbade the marriage due to Felix's humble origins, the young man volunteered for the arena to prove his worth and earn the social status necessary to win her hand. "If I can survive 5 fights," he says with the confidence of youth. Her father has promised to reconsider. The crowd loves a romantic story, and I intend to give them one. Felix has already fought twice, winning both contests with skill and style that earned him substantial popularity. His earnings have allowed him to purchase a small house and establish a modest business, proving to his beloved's father that he can provide for a family. 3 more victories will earn him enough money and fame to be considered a suitable match for a patrician's daughter. His story illustrates how the arena serves as a mechanism for social advancement that exists nowhere else in Roman society. These aren't the savage brutes of popular imagination. They're people driven by the same motivations that drive humans everywhere: love, ambition, family loyalty, and the desire to control their own destiny. They've found a way to transform desperate circumstances into genuine opportunity, even in a world that seems designed to crush individual initiative. Their success stories challenge conventional assumptions about Roman society and demonstrate the remarkable human capacity for adaptation and achievement. The business model behind the Gladiator games would impress modern sports executives with its sophistication and profitability. Every aspect is calculated for maximum profit and minimum loss, from the initial investment in training and equipment to the complex revenue streams generated by each event. The lanista, the school's owner, operates on profit margins that would make any merchant jealous, but he also shoulders enormous risks and responsibilities. The economics are staggering when you understand the full scope of the operation. A single day's games in the Colosseum generates revenue equivalent to several $1 million in today's money. Ticket sales alone bring in enormous sums. Prime seats near the arena floor cost the equivalent of a skilled worker's monthly salary, while even the cheapest seats in the upper tiers represent a significant expense for ordinary citizens. But tickets are just the beginning of the revenue stream. Concession stands throughout the amphitheater sell wine, roasted nuts, sausages, and bread to hungry spectators. Program scrolls describing the fighters' backgrounds, and fighting records are purchased by fans who want to make informed bets. Merchandise vendors sell everything from miniature weapons to perfumes allegedly made from gladiator sweat. The betting operations alone generate profits that rival the gate receipts, with sophisticated odds makers calculating the chances of various outcomes. But the real money comes from the complex web of sponsorships and endorsements that surround successful fighters. Wealthy merchants pay gladiators to wear their colors or carry their names on their equipment. Tavern owners sponsor fighters in exchange for exclusive rights to host victory celebrations. Even political candidates sometimes associate themselves with popular gladiators. Understanding that athletic success can translate into political influence. The training regimen reveals the true nature of gladiatorial combat and the enormous investment required to produce skilled fighters. New recruits undergo months of intensive preparation before they're allowed anywhere near actual combat. They learn not just how to fight, but how to fall convincingly, how to make shallow wounds appear mortal, and how to read the crowd's mood and respond appropriately. The goal is always to provide maximum entertainment value while minimizing the risk of serious injury or death. Most training is done with wooden weapons to prevent accidents, but the techniques taught are deadly serious. Fighters learn dozens of different combat styles, each with its own weapons, tactics, and theatrical elements. The retiarios fights with a net and trident, relying on mobility and entanglement. The secutor uses sword and shield, emphasizing defense and precision strikes. The murmillo carries a large shield, and gladius, focusing on power and intimidation. Each style requires years to master, and successful fighters often know multiple styles to provide variety for the crowds. The medical care available to gladiators is revolutionary for its time and superior to what most free citizens receive. Each major school employs multiple physicians who specialize in combat injuries and have developed techniques for treating wounds that won't be rediscovered for centuries. They understand the importance of cleanliness in preventing infection, use sophisticated surgical procedures to repair damaged tissue, and have developed pain management techniques that allow fighters to recover quickly from injuries. The mortality rate among gladiators is actually lower than among Roman soldiers, largely because these doctors have perfected their skills through constant practice and because the fighters receive immediate medical attention when injured. The physicians also work closely with trainers to develop conditioning programs that minimize injury risk and maximize performance. They understand nutrition, exercise physiology, and sports medicine in ways that wouldn't be matched in the modern world until the 20th century. The social hierarchy within the school reflects the broader Roman obsession with status and achievement. But it also provides genuine opportunities for advancement based on merit rather than birth. New recruits sleep in dormitories and eat simple but nutritious meals. But successful fighters enjoy private quarters, personal servants, and gourmet food prepared by skilled cooks. The most successful gladiators live better than most free citizens, with access to luxuries that even wealthy merchants might envy. But the true genius of the system lies in its psychological manipulation and the way it transforms potential desperation into genuine ambition. The gladiators aren't just fighting for survival, they're fighting for fame, fortune, and the chance to retire wealthy and respected. This hope, however slim, changes everything about their approach to the work. Men who might otherwise plot rebellion instead compete for the crowd's affection, knowing that popularity brings privileges and survival brings wealth. The school operates on a strict schedule that would impress any modern corporation. Training begins at dawn and continues until mid-afternoon, with different groups working on different skills at different times. Meals are planned by nutritionists who understand the connection between diet and performance, with fighters receiving individualized meal plans based on their size, fighting style, and training schedule. Even entertainment is scheduled. Gladiators attend theater performances and musical concerts, partly for enjoyment and partly to study stagecraft they can apply to their own performances. The darker realities lurk beneath the surface glamour, like shadows in torchlight, never completely absent, even in the most successful and well-run schools. Despite the medical care, professional training, and comparative luxury, this is still a world where violence is currency and death is always present. The gladiators may eat well and sleep in comfortable beds, but they do so knowing that each fight could be their last. Each training session might result in a career-ending injury, and each day brings them closer to the moment when age or misfortune will end their ability to compete. The The psychological toll is immense and often invisible to outsiders who see only the glory and wealth. Many fighters develop what we would now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder, suffering from nightmares, sudden violent outbursts, and an inability to form close relationships. The constant proximity to death affects different men in different ways. Some become fatalistic and reckless, others obsessively cautious, and still others develop a kind of manic energy that drives them to seek increasingly dangerous challenges. The power dynamics within the school create their own forms of cruelty and exploitation. Senior gladiators hold tremendous influence over newcomers, and this authority is sometimes abused in ways that go far beyond the normal hazing of military units. The most attractive fighters, both male and female, often face pressure to provide sexual services to wealthy patrons, trainers, or other gladiators. While some gladiators form genuine romantic relationships within the school, others find themselves coerced into situations they cannot escape without risking their careers or their lives. The crowd's bloodlust, while not as extreme as popular myth suggests, is still very real and can escalate rapidly under certain circumstances. On days when the games run poorly, when the emperor is in a particularly dark mood, or when political tensions are high, the usual restraints can disappear entirely. What starts as choreographed combat can escalate into genuine brutality, with referees instructed to let fights continue until one participant is dead or permanently disabled. The gladiators live with the constant awareness that their survival depends not just on their skill, but on forces completely beyond their control. Disease represents another constant threat that claims more gladiators than swords ever will, despite the medical care and attention to hygiene. The close quarters and shared facilities create ideal conditions for epidemics. During your training, you witness 3 fighters die from fever in a single week. Men who had survived dozens of battles only to succumb to invisible enemies that their skilled physicians cannot defeat. The randomness of disease serves as a constant reminder that no amount of skill or preparation can guarantee survival. The children of gladiators face particular challenges that illustrate the moral complexity of this world. While some schools allow successful fighters to marry and raise families, these children grow up in an environment where their parents' profession marks them as different from other Roman children. They're neither slaves nor truly free, existing in a social limbo that offers them few opportunities beyond following their parents into the arena. Some schools provide education and training that might allow these children to escape their circumstances, but others simply view them as future recruits for the next generation of fighters. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the gladiatorial system is how it corrupts everyone it touches, turning even well-intentioned people into participants in a system that treats human life as entertainment. The physicians who save lives also learn to prolong suffering when it serves the crowd's desire for spectacle. The trainers who teach survival skills also teach theatrical death, showing fighters how to die in ways that satisfy the audience's bloodlust. The managers who provide comfortable lives and genuine opportunities also calculate the precise moment when a fighter's career should end, whether through retirement, permanent injury, or death. Everyone becomes complicit in a system that transforms human beings into commodities, their worth measured entirely by their ability to provide entertainment. Even the gladiators themselves become part of this corruption. as successful fighters often invest in schools of their own, perpetuating the cycle that once trapped them. The system creates a moral ambiguity that challenges everyone involved, forcing them to reconcile their humanity with their participation in what amounts to ritualized violence. Yet even in this darkness, human resilience shines through with remarkable consistency. Gladiators form bonds of brotherhood that transcend their circumstances, sharing food with those who have fallen on hard times, comforting the wounded, and creating informal networks that provide emotional support and practical assistance. They develop their own codes of honor that emphasize courage, skill, and loyalty to their comrades. Some use their fame to speak out against injustice, while others quietly help fellow fighters escape or retire safely. The most successful gladiators often become patrons themselves, using their wealth and influence to improve conditions for the next generation of fighters. They establish medical funds for injured veterans, provide education for gladiators' children, and sometimes even purchase the freedom of promising fighters who might otherwise be trapped in the system. Their efforts represent a form of resistance to the dehumanizing aspects of their profession, an assertion that their humanity cannot be completely extinguished by the circumstances they face. The gladiator industry connects to vast trade networks that span the entire known world, creating economic relationships that influence politics, culture, and technology across the Roman Empire. The weapons used in combat come from specialized forges in Gaul, where master smiths have spent generations perfecting techniques for creating blades that are sharp enough to cut, but balanced and designed for theatrical combat. These craftsmen understand metallurgy, weight distribution, and the psychological impact of different weapon designs on both fighters and crowds. The armor worn by gladiators represents another specialized industry, with artisans in Asia Minor using techniques learned from generations of military suppliers, but adapted for the unique requirements of arena combat. The armor must provide protection while allowing for the dramatic movements that entertain crowds. And it must be visually striking enough to enhance the spectacle. The finest pieces are works of art in their own right, decorated with intricate engravings and inlays that reflect the wealth and status of their wearers. Even the sand used in arena floors is carefully selected and imported from specific locations, chosen for their ability to absorb blood quickly while providing stable footing for combat. Different types of sand are used for different types of events. Finer sand for gladiatorial combat, coarser sand for animal hunts, and special mixtures for naval battles. The logistics of transporting and storing these materials represent a significant expense and require careful planning to ensure adequate supplies for the busy fighting season. The animal trade represents perhaps the most complex and expensive aspect of the gladiatorial industry. Exotic beasts arrive from every corner of the known world, transported in specially designed ships that can accommodate everything from lions and tigers to elephants and rhinoceroses. The animals are then moved overland in massive caravans that employ hundreds of handlers, veterinarians, guards, and support staff. The mortality rate during transport is high, making successful deliveries extremely valuable. Lions from North Africa, leopards from Ethiopia, bears from the northern forests, and crocodiles from the Nile all flow toward Rome through supply chains that operate with military precision. The animals must be kept healthy, fed, and properly handled by specialists who understand their behavior and needs. Some animals are trained for specific types of performances, while others are simply released into the arena to provide unpredictable dangers for the human participants. Information and reputation travel along these same trade routes, creating a form of celebrity that transcends local boundaries and national borders. News of a gladiator's victory in Rome spreads throughout the empire within weeks, carried by merchants, soldiers, and professional messengers who understand the value of such information. This creates opportunities for successful fighters to capitalize on their fame in distant cities, commanding higher fees for appearances and attracting fans who have never seen them fight. The political implications of this information network are enormous. Emperors use gladiatorial games to demonstrate their power and generosity, but they also depend on them to maintain social stability throughout the empire. The games serve as a pressure release valve for urban tensions, giving the masses spectacular entertainment that distracts them from political and economic problems. But this creates a dangerous dependency. An emperor who fails to provide adequate games risks losing public support and facing rebellion. Wealthy families throughout the empire invest in gladiator schools as both business ventures and political tools. Sponsoring successful fighters brings prestige and influence, while the profits from successful schools fund other political activities. Some senators own multiple schools in different cities, creating entertainment empires that rival any modern media corporation in their scope and influence. These investments also serve as hedges against political instability, since popular gladiators often enjoy more public support than the politicians who sponsor them. The legal system adapts to accommodate this industry, with special courts established to handle disputes between gladiator schools, establish rules for combat, and regulate the treatment of fighters. Lawyers specialize in gladiatorial law, creating legal precedents that influence jurisprudence throughout the empire. The games become so integrated into Roman society that they shape the development of legal thinking, particularly in areas related to contracts, liability, and the rights of non-citizens. Provincial governors use gladiatorial games to demonstrate their loyalty to Rome and their ability to maintain order in their territories. They compete with each other to host the most spectacular events, driving innovation in arena design, combat techniques, and crowd management. This competition spreads Roman culture throughout the empire, while also creating local variations that reflect regional tastes and customs. The result is a cultural fusion that strengthens imperial unity while allowing for local identity. The cultural impact of gladiatorial games extends far beyond the arena walls and influences every aspect of Roman intellectual and artistic life. Poets write epic verses about famous fighters, transforming their struggles into literature that will survive for centuries and influence writers throughout the ancient world. The stories of gladiators become part of the collective Roman imagination, providing themes and characters that appear in everything from serious drama to popular entertainment. The visual arts are similarly influenced, with sculptors creating masterpieces depicting famous combats and painters decorating wealthy homes with elaborate scenes of gladiatorial victory. These works of art serve not just as decoration, but as social commentary, exploring themes of courage, mortality, and the relationship between civilization and violence. The artistic techniques developed for gladiatorial subjects influence broader artistic traditions and help establish aesthetic standards that will endure for centuries. The games influence military training throughout the empire, in ways that have profound implications for Roman military effectiveness. Soldiers study gladiatorial techniques, adapting them for battlefield use, and incorporating theatrical elements that make Roman armies more psychologically intimidating. The emphasis on individual skill and dramatic presentation changes how Roman armies approach combat, making them more flexible and adaptable than their more conventional enemies. Some military units adopt gladiatorial traditions entirely, creating elite formations that combine practical battlefield effectiveness with theatrical flair. These units serve as both effective fighting forces and propaganda tools, demonstrating Roman power through spectacular displays of martial skill. The psychological impact of these formations often proves as valuable as their combat effectiveness, with enemies sometimes surrendering rather than face troops whose reputation for skill and ferocity precedes them. Educational systems throughout the empire begin incorporating gladiatorial examples into their curricula, recognizing the educational value of these popular spectacles. Students learn rhetoric by studying famous speeches delivered in the arena, understanding how effective communication can mean the difference between life and death. They study mathematics by calculating odds and analyzing combat statistics, learning practical applications for abstract concepts. The games become a lens through which young Romans understand fundamental concepts of courage, honor, and destiny. Teachers use gladiatorial examples to illustrate moral and philosophical points, while students debate the ethical implications of the spectacles. This educational integration ensures that gladiatorial culture becomes deeply embedded in Roman intellectual life, influencing how an entire generation thinks about violence, entertainment, and social responsibility. The technological innovations driven by gladiatorial needs spread throughout Roman society, improving life for everyone, rather than just the participants in the games. The advanced medical techniques developed to treat combat injuries benefit all citizens, while new methods for working metal create better tools and weapons for civilian use. Engineering advances in arena construction influence the building of theaters, temples, and public buildings throughout the empire. The hydraulic systems used to flood arena floors for naval battles lead to improvements in urban water management, while the mechanical devices used to raise animals and scenery from underground chambers inspire innovations in construction and manufacturing. Even the organizational techniques developed to manage complex gladiatorial events influence broader administrative practices, making Roman government more efficient and effective. Religious traditions adapt to accommodate the gladiatorial phenomenon, with new gods and goddesses emerging specifically to address the spiritual needs of fighters and fans. Existing deities gain new attributes related to combat and victory, while entirely new religious practices develop around the rituals of arena combat. Some gladiators become objects of religious devotion themselves, their victories interpreted as evidence of divine favor and their deaths mourned as religious tragedies. This creates a complex spiritual landscape where entertainment and worship intersect in ways that challenge traditional religious boundaries. Priests develop new ceremonies to bless fighters before combat, while religious festivals incorporate gladiatorial elements that blur the lines between sacred and secular entertainment. The result is a religious synthesis that reflects the deep cultural impact of the games on Roman society. The games influence social relationships throughout the empire in unexpected and far-reaching ways. Marriages are arranged based on gladiatorial connections, with successful fighters considered desirable matches despite their technically low social status. Business partnerships form between people who meet at the games, creating commercial networks that span the empire. Social climbing becomes possible through association with successful fighters, as their fame and wealth open doors that would otherwise remain closed to people of humble origin. The arena becomes a unique space where traditional Roman class boundaries blur and new forms of social mobility emerge. Wealthy patricians compete for the friendship of successful gladiators, while successful fighters use their earnings to purchase property, establish businesses, and gain influence in their communities. This social fluidity creates opportunities for advancement that exist nowhere else in Roman society, while also challenging traditional notions of status and worth. Intellectual discourse throughout the empire grapples with the moral implications of gladiatorial combat, creating philosophical debates that influence Roman thought for centuries. Philosophers debate whether the games elevate human nature by celebrating courage and skill, or degrade it by treating violence as entertainment. Historians analyze the political functions of the games, while legal scholars examine their impact on justice and social order. The games become a focal point for broader discussions about civilization, morality, and the proper relationship between individual and state. These intellectual debates reflect the complex position of gladiatorial combat in Roman society. Simultaneously celebrated and criticized, popular and controversial, profitable and morally troubling. The conversations sparked by the games contribute to the development of Roman philosophy, political theory, and ethical thinking, ensuring that their influence extends far beyond the arena walls. The rhythm of life in the gladiator schools follows patterns that connect to the larger cycles of Roman society, creating a complex calendar of preparation, performance, and recovery that shapes the entire industry. During the winter months, when travel is difficult and weather makes outdoor spectacles uncomfortable, the schools focus on intensive training and recruitment. This is when new techniques are developed. Equipment is repaired and upgraded, and the most serious instruction takes place. Winter training is particularly rigorous because fighters must maintain their conditioning while preparing for the demanding spring season. They practice in covered courtyards, work with specialized trainers on technique refinement, and undergo medical examinations to address any lingering injuries from the previous season. New recruits receive their most intensive training during these months, learning not just combat skills, but also the theatrical elements that make for successful arena performances. Spring brings the beginning of the fighting season, and with it, a sense of renewed energy and anticipation that electrifies the entire gladiatorial community. The first games of the year are particularly important, as they set the tone for the entire season and provide opportunities for fighters to demonstrate improvements made during the winter training period. Gladiators who have spent months preparing finally get the chance to demonstrate their skills, while crowds hungry for entertainment after the long winter provide enthusiastic and appreciative audiences. The spring season also brings new challenges, as fighters must readjust to the psychological pressures of actual combat after months of training. The transition from practice to performance requires mental preparation as much as physical conditioning, and experienced fighters often serve as mentors to help newer gladiators manage the stress and excitement of returning to the arena. Summer represents the peak of gladiatorial activity, with the weather perfect for outdoor spectacles and the Roman calendar filled with festivals and celebrations that require games. This is when the most elaborate spectacles are staged, featuring the most skilled fighters, the most exotic animals, and the most complex theatrical elements. The intensity of the summer season takes its toll on everyone involved, from the gladiators themselves to the support staff who work around the clock to maintain the quality of the spectacles. The summer heat adds another layer of challenge to arena combat, requiring fighters to adapt their techniques and strategies to account for increased fatigue and dehydration. Medical staff must be particularly vigilant during this period, as heat-related illnesses can be as dangerous as combat injuries. The most successful fighters learn to use the heat to their advantage, understanding how weather conditions affect both their own performance and that of their opponents. Political events create their own rhythms that override the natural seasonal patterns and require the gladiatorial industry to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. When a new emperor takes power, lavish games are expected to celebrate the transition and demonstrate the new ruler's generosity and power. These inaugural games often feature the most expensive and elaborate spectacles, with no expense spared to impress the public and establish the emperor's reputation. Military victories call for triumphal games that can last for days and feature special events designed to commemorate specific achievements. These celebrations often include reenactments of famous battles, with gladiators playing the roles of Roman soldiers and their enemies. The staging of these events requires careful coordination between military and gladiatorial authorities, as historical accuracy must be balanced with entertainment value. Religious festivals throughout the year require specific types of combat that honor particular gods and goddesses. These events often follow traditional patterns that have been established over centuries, but they also provide opportunities for innovation and creativity. Gladiator schools must maintain fighters trained in the specific techniques required for religious festivals, even when these skills are not used in regular commercial games. The legal calendar also influences gladiatorial activity in ways that most people never consider. Certain times of year are considered inappropriate for games according to Roman law and custom, while others practically require elaborate spectacles. Court proceedings sometimes incorporate gladiatorial elements, with legal disputes being resolved through combat between champions representing different parties. The schools must maintain specialized fighters who are trained specifically for these legal applications, which require different skills than entertainment combat. Economic cycles affect the gladiator industry just like any other business, but the effects are often delayed and amplified by the substantial investments required to train and maintain fighters. During prosperous times, the games become more elaborate and the gladiators better compensated. But these improvements require months or years of investment before they become visible to the public. Economic downturns force schools to operate more efficiently, sometimes leading to increased mortality rates, as cost-cutting measures reduce safety precautions and medical care. The gladiators themselves become sensitive indicators of the empire's overall economic health, with their earnings, living conditions, and survival rates reflecting broader economic trends. Successful fighters often invest their earnings in businesses that provide economic stability after their fighting careers end, creating a class of wealthy former gladiators who contribute to economic growth throughout the empire. agricultural seasons influence the supply of both gladiators and spectators in ways that create predictable patterns of recruitment and attendance. Poor harvests drive desperate farmers to volunteer for the arena, while good harvests provide the surplus wealth that funds elaborate games. The urban population's mood and behavior change with the seasons, affecting how they respond to different types of spectacles and creating opportunities for promoters who understand these patterns. The availability of food also affects the gladiators directly, as their specialized diets require consistent supplies of high-quality ingredients. During times of scarcity, maintaining proper nutrition for fighters becomes a significant challenge that can affect their performance and survival rates. The most successful schools develop relationships with suppliers throughout the empire to ensure consistent access to the foods their fighters need to maintain peak condition. Behind every successful gladiator, school stands a complex hierarchy of skilled professionals whose expertise makes the spectacular arena performances possible. The lanista himself is often a former gladiator who has parlayed his success into business acumen. But he must also understand finance, psychology, logistics, and politics equally well. His decisions affect hundreds of lives and millions of sestertii in revenue, making the position one of enormous responsibility and pressure. The lanista must balance the competing demands of profitability, safety, and entertainment value, while navigating the complex political and social pressures that surround the gladiatorial industry. He must maintain relationships with arena managers, government officials, wealthy patrons, and the media, all while ensuring that his fighters receive the training and support they need to succeed. The most successful lanistas are those who can combine business sense with genuine concern for their fighters' welfare. The trainers represent the heart of the operation and possess encyclopedic knowledge of combat techniques, crowd psychology, and human motivation that has been accumulated over decades of experience. They can assess a new recruit's potential within minutes, design training programs that maximize individual strengths while addressing weaknesses, and prepare fighters for the specific psychological challenges of arena combat. Their expertise is so valuable that successful trainers often earn more than the gladiators they train. Each trainer specializes in different aspects of gladiatorial preparation. Some focus on physical conditioning and combat technique, while others specialize in the theatrical elements that make for successful arena performances. The best trainers understand that success in the arena requires both physical skill and psychological resilience, and they work to develop both aspects of their fighters' abilities. The medical staff includes not just physicians, but also specialists in nutrition, physical therapy, and mental health, who understand that a gladiator's body and mind are precision instruments that require constant maintenance and adjustment. They develop individualized treatment plans that address each fighter's specific needs, create specialized diets that optimize performance for different fighting styles, and provide psychological support that helps fighters cope with the stress of their profession. The medical team works closely with trainers to prevent injuries and optimize performance, using techniques that won't be rediscovered by mainstream medicine for centuries. They understand the importance of rest and recovery, the relationship between nutrition and performance, and the psychological factors that affect physical health. Their work contributes not just to the success of individual fighters, but to the advancement of medical knowledge throughout the empire. The equipment managers oversee vast inventories of weapons, armor, and specialized gear that must be maintained in perfect condition for both training and combat. They understand the subtle differences between weapons designed for different purposes and can customize equipment to meet the specific needs of individual fighters. They maintain detailed records of each gladiator's preferences and requirements, ensuring that every fighter enters the arena with equipment that maximizes their chances of survival and success. The complexity of equipment management in a major gladiator school rivals that of a modern military unit. Different weapons require different maintenance procedures. Armor must be repaired and adjusted constantly, and new equipment must be acquired and tested regularly. The equipment managers must also understand the theatrical aspects of gladiatorial combat, ensuring that gear not only functions properly, but also looks impressive to the crowds. The administrative staff handles the business side of the operation, managing the complex financial, legal, and logistical requirements of running a major entertainment enterprise. They negotiate contracts with arena managers, arrange transportation for fighters and equipment, manage payroll and benefits for hundreds of employees, and maintain the detailed records required by Roman law. They also handle marketing and public relations, ensuring that their gladiators maintain positive relationships with the crowds, the media, and potential sponsors. The administrative challenges of running a gladiator school are enormous, requiring skills in accounting, law, logistics, and public relations. The staff must track the performance and earnings of individual fighters, manage complex contracts and legal obligations, and coordinate with suppliers and service providers throughout the empire. They must also maintain relationships with government officials, wealthy patrons, and other stakeholders who can influence the school's success. Many of these positions are family businesses, passed down through generations of skilled professionals who have developed deep knowledge of the gladiatorial world that cannot be acquired through formal education alone. The son of a trainer often becomes a trainer himself, inheriting not just technical skills, but also relationships, reputation, and institutional knowledge that takes decades to develop. These family traditions create continuity and stability within the industry, while also preserving specialized knowledge that might otherwise be lost. The success of a gladiator school depends on the seamless cooperation of all these specialists, each of whom must excel in their particular area while also understanding how their work fits into the larger operation. A breakdown in any area, medical care, training, equipment management, or administration, can result in disaster for individual fighters and financial ruin for the school. The pressure is constant. The stakes are literally life and death, and the margin for error is minimal. Yet these professionals take genuine pride in their work, knowing that they're part of an industry that provides entertainment for millions while offering genuine opportunities for social advancement to people who might otherwise have no hope of improving their circumstances. They understand that their expertise contributes to spectacles that will be remembered and discussed for generations. And they take satisfaction in knowing that their skills help transform desperate individuals into celebrated athletes and successful businessmen. The gladiatorial arena, despite its violence and moral complexity, reveals universal truths about human nature that transcend time, culture, and circumstance. It shows us that people will risk everything for the chance to control their own destiny, even when the odds are overwhelmingly against them and the consequences of failure are severe. The gladiators who stepped into the sand were not so different from modern athletes, entrepreneurs, or anyone else who chooses to pursue their dreams despite the possibility of failure, injury, or death. Their stories demonstrate the remarkable human capacity for adaptation and resilience in the face of circumstances that would break many people. Faced with slavery, poverty, or social rejection, these men and women found ways to not just survive but thrive, creating meaningful lives and successful careers from situations that seemed hopeless. They formed communities, developed meaningful relationships, and maintained their dignity and humanity even in the most dehumanizing circumstances. The gladiatorial system also reveals how human societies use entertainment to process difficult truths about existence that are too painful or complex to confront directly. The Romans used these spectacles to explore their own mortality, to examine concepts of honor and courage, and to create shared experiences that bound their communities together despite differences in class, ethnicity, and background. Modern societies do the same thing through sports, movies, and other forms of entertainment that allow us to engage with life's fundamental challenges through the safety of symbolic representation. The economic and social structures that supported the gladiatorial games demonstrate how human ingenuity can transform even the most unlikely circumstances into opportunities for advancement and prosperity. The same creative energy that built the Roman Empire and conquered much of the known world also created an entertainment industry that provided livelihoods for thousands of people and offered genuine paths to wealth and social mobility for those brave enough to seize them. Perhaps most importantly, the gladiatorial arena shows us that history is rarely as simple as it appears in popular accounts or entertainment media. The image of savage fighters battling to the death for the amusement of bloodthirsty crowds contains just enough truth to be believable. But it misses the complex reality of human beings trying to make the best of their circumstances while maintaining their humanity and dignity. The real story is always more nuanced, more interesting, and more human than the simplified version we often accept. The gladiators of Rome were neither victims nor heroes in the traditional sense, but something more complex and ultimately more interesting. People who found themselves in extraordinary circumstances and chose to meet those circumstances with courage, skill, and determination. Their legacy reminds us that even in the darkest situations, human beings can find ways to assert their humanity and create meaning from suffering. They teach us that true strength comes not from avoiding difficulty, but from facing it with grace, intelligence, and an unwavering commitment to survival and success. Their example also demonstrates the importance of community and mutual support in overcoming adversity. The gladiators who survived and prospered were those who formed strong relationships with their fellow fighters, who learned from experienced mentors, and who understood that individual success depended on collective effort. They created their own codes of honor and mutual assistance that helped them maintain their humanity, even in an environment designed to reduce them to mere commodities. As you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that the same courage and resilience that enabled a desperate grain merchant from Alexandria to survive and potentially thrive in the Roman arena exists within you. The challenges you face may be different, but the human capacity to overcome them remains constant across time and culture. The gladiators of Rome understood that survival is not just about physical strength or technical skill, but about the ability to adapt to changing circumstances, to find allies and mentors, and to maintain hope even in the darkest situations. Their stories remind us that success often comes not from avoiding risk, but from taking calculated risks with intelligence and preparation. They show us that dignity and humanity can be preserved even in the most difficult circumstances, and that opportunities for advancement and prosperity can be found in the most unlikely places. Most importantly, they demonstrate that the human spirit is remarkably difficult to crush, and that courage, skill, and determination can overcome even the most daunting obstacles. The gladiatorial arena may seem like a relic of a more brutal age, but the human qualities it celebrated, courage, skill, determination, and the will to survive, remain as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago. The specific challenges we face may be different, but the fundamental human experience of struggling against adversity, seeking opportunity, and trying to create meaning from difficult circumstances remains unchanged. If you enjoyed this journey through history and found yourself drifting peacefully into the complex world of ancient Rome, please consider subscribing to our channel. We explore the hidden stories behind history's most fascinating places, bringing you the sights, sounds, and experiences that made our ancestors human, just like us. We believe that understanding the past helps us better understand ourselves and the timeless challenges that define the human experience. Sweet dreams, and thank you for joining us in discovering what really happened inside Roman gladiator arenas.